Okay. So hello, everybody. Can I start by asking who has heard of somatics?
I've heard of it, but I'm not really, I wouldn't really know what it's about myself. That's how I feel. I've heard of it, but
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm actually doing it. I'm actually seeing someone. So
right.
I'm Natalie. I can't get my video to work on my phone. But yeah, I started somatic therapy experience, the words that you use for it, probably about 2 months ago. And it was actually through, I hadn't heard anything of it, and I was actually seeing a private women's health physiotherapist after giving birth, and it was through her who told me about it. And yeah, so for the past couple of months, I've been seeing someone.
And how are you finding it?
Yeah, finding it really good. And yeah, actually was very nervous going into it because it's the unknown.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely taking a lot from it. I've kind of a wee bit kind of not seen her now for about 4 weeks. I'm kind of going through some personal stuff at the moment, hence why I've came on as well. I was diagnosed with my skin cancer again, so again for surgery on Monday with regards to getting that removed. So yeah, so somatic was something that I was looking to do, and actually yeah, find it really helpful. But yeah, it'd be nice to actually hear your own opinion and views, and actually kind of to the extent what it is, because people ask me, and I'm like, well, how I explain it is like it's kind of trauma therapy for the kind of try to get your immune system working, nervous system working back into play and things. So I kind of struggle to kind of explain to other people. So
that is the thing about it. Thanks for that, Natalie. Even though I teach it, it's still, I do find it quite difficult to explain what it is. And I came to somatics as a yoga teacher, and I was already doing yoga and Pilates, and then and I thought, oh, I've got this quite good body awareness from doing Pilates, and then I started to do yoga and thought, oh my gosh, this is another level. And then I started to do somatics, and I'll tell you the journey of that as I go through the talk, and discovered this whole new level of movement. What I suggest is that you all join my Try Somatics free group, and then you can actually experience it, because above all, it is experiential. Like, Nikki trying to describe hyperpressives, and saying what's the difference between a hyperpressive and a Kegel. You just have to do them both, don't you? And you have to feel them in your body to then go, oh right, now I understand. Now I've kind of embodied that feeling, and I know what it is. So yes, I'm sorry that doesn't directly answer the question of what somatics is, but hopefully by the end of the talk you'll have a bit more of an idea. So let me just go into sharing my screen. I'm just going to respectfully mute, I think it might be Lorna, yeah, just to cut down that background noise there. So yeah, so let me find my screen. Oh, I can never find the beginning of the presentation.
Don't worry.
It's hidden by the control panel. All right, there we go. Slideshow. There we go. I'll just move it to the bottom. All right. From the beginning. There we go. Okay. So let's move that back. So my name is Cheryl Lee, and I'm an exercise referral specialist, and I'm also a registered somatic movement educator. And the work I do with people is helping them to get out of pain. I've got these pictures all over for me, and this is kind of to remind me what to talk about. I haven't got any notes, but the pictures will remind me what I want to say. So yeah, this picture of somebody straddling a ravine there, that's a little bit how I feel with the work I do. So I've got one foot in the evidence-based practice camp with exercise referral. So kind of doing what we know works for pain. But then I've got this other foot in the more mind, body and what could be called phenomenological side, where this is about direct experience. This is about what we feel, what we sense, and what our experience of something is. I mean, I say one of them is evidence-based and the other isn't, but you know, there is a mindful movement aspect to somatics, which you know, over the last, I don't know, sort of 10, it seems like in the last 10 years, mindfulness has really kind of seen this surge in interest, and we've also had a surge in evidence around mindfulness. So we do know that mindfulness has a lot of evidence around it in terms of what it can do for pain, stress, anxiety, and all of those things. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. How do I do that? Normally I just press space, but that doesn't seem to be working. Right, okay. Yeah, so the theme of the talk today is about a comfortable body and stress resilience using somatics. Okay, so to give you kind of a context, I think it's useful for me to talk about my journey and how I got here. So as I said, I started off teaching yoga and Pilates, but way before that, in my 20s and 30s, I used to work as a teacher. So I taught languages, I taught French and German in secondary school. My attitude was very much, I've covered my friend, I didn't think it was fair to show a picture of my friend, so she's turned into this beautiful flower. But that sort of summed up, you know, what I wanted to do at the weekends. I just wanted to get my glad rags on, go out, and then for the rest of the time I was a workaholic. And during my 30s, that kind of changed a little bit. So I was still partying hard, still working hard, but then I started working out as well. So there was a little bit of a health element that started to come in there. Okay, and then I'm actually really not well in that photograph. I'm 39 years old in that picture, 9 months and 2 weeks pregnant. So I ended up giving birth 16 days overdue. I was just so desperate. But it had not been a good pregnancy. You can't really see from the pictures, but I'm full of cold sores. I had not slept for about 3 months. I knew that I had a spondylolisthesis, which is a kind of an issue in the spine where your vertebrae don't sit neatly on top of one another, and you know they can slide. So I knew I had that, but it was controlled. And I also knew I had a herniated disc, but that was fine as well. Then I fell. I had this massive fall at work on a floor that had just been mopped, just went sort of landed, legs under me, landed on my bum, and had a massive bleed, but you know, didn't lose the baby, everything was fine. But from that point onwards, I just had this most horrendous nerve pain going all the way down my left side, through my neck to my foot, just all the way down the left side. So when you're pregnant and you've got belly like that, obviously you can't lie on your front. I couldn't lie on my side. So I was kind of like, oh my God, so I've got to lie on my back like for the whole night. And I just wasn't sleeping. It was absolutely terrible. However, I say it was terrible. I was doing yoga, so I was doing a lot of breathing and relaxation. And I actually felt okay mentally, psychologically, I was fine. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be over soon. How wrong I was. So anyway, I got into hospital. Oh, the other thing was when I fell, I also got pubis symphysis. What's it called? Not syndrome. Dysfunction. That's it. Pubis symphysis dysfunction and kind of just pelvic girdle pain. So it was not good. When I gave birth, it was a traumatic birth after forceps, and then I ended up with a cesarean, and healing was very slow. So I was pretty depleted. As I said, I'd had this sleep deprivation situation. And on top of that, my baby had colic. And, you know, after about 4 months, we found out that he had silent reflux. So he'd been kind of being sick, but he wasn't actually vomiting, but he wasn't sleeping. So that sort of added to the sleep deprivation. It's added to my kind of ability to feed. So he wasn't thriving. And that was just awful when, you know, the healthcare workers came around and said, oh, you know, we're going to have to put failure to thrive. Like, oh my God, you know, I'm not able to feed my baby. And I had recurrent mastitis. So just loads and loads of antibiotics, which contributed to this, you know, this situation of just generally being ill and totally depleted. So by the end of my maternity leave, yeah, so I'd had a hospital stay of about 5 days after giving birth and basically couldn't move. And as I said, my healing was really slow, and it was like my body felt like a dead weight. It just felt like a block. I found it really difficult to move. And even at the end of a year, because I took a year off for maternity, I was like, how am I going to go back to work? I can't go in a classroom. I can't bend over desks, bend over a desk sort of preparing the work and then marking all the work. It's just, you know, it's a really horrible position for me. And plus I was still going on with this kind of sleeplessness. I was still doing yoga and Pilates, but it wasn't enough. It just, you know, really wasn't getting to what I needed. I saw several physios, and they just said, we can't really do anything, we can't help. And then I got referred to a chronic pain clinic. Their treatment was giving me a book on CBT. I mean, I know, you know, I'm not dissing CBT here, but just to hand somebody a book was not really very helpful at that stage. They also gave me some amitriptyline, which was helpful because I'd stopped breastfeeding, so at least that was helping with sleep. But then the suggestion that floored me was, well, and other than that, you just need to start using a wheelchair. And I just thought, oh my God, there's got to be something else. And I'd been to have some craniosacral therapy actually, and the therapist kind of said to me at the end, I felt great at the end. So I just had some hope that, you know what, maybe I can feel better, because just after this session, she'd hardly done anything. It was a really, really light touch. And at the end, I remember that she said, you know, oh, we've just helped your nervous system. And I didn't really know what she meant, but I thought this is worth looking into. So, yeah, and so I was confused. Because of the herniated disc, I've been told don't bend. Because of the spondylolisthesis, I've been told don't go into extension. And then because of my own, this nerve pain that I had lying on my side was absolute agony. So I just, you know, couldn't get comfortable at night, couldn't get comfortable during the day, and actually exercise. I was doing really limited Pilates and yoga, and it just all felt really uncomfortable. I just didn't really know what to do. So I went on the internet, of course, like you do. And yeah, so I was in this kind of situation where my immune system had been challenged. I was physically challenged, psychologically kind of in a bad place, because I didn't know where this was all going to end, and not sleeping. So, you know, I was majorly stressed. Into somatics. So, you know, on my Googling expedition, I found this new term that I've not heard of called somatics. And there was an article which talked about a concept that I've never heard of before called the dark vice. And how it was described was a feeling of being kind of held at the front, held at the back, and held at the sides, like you're in a vice, you're gripped and you can't move. And that is just exactly how I felt. And I thought, right, this merits a little bit more investigation. So I invested in Thomas Hanna's book, and actually this quotation, in the introduction, I'll just read it out to you, but it was just like an aha moment for me. So the fact is that during the course of our lives, our sensory motor system continually responds to daily stresses and traumas with specific muscular reflexes. I've never heard anything like this before. These reflexes, repeatedly triggered, create habitual muscular contractions which we cannot voluntarily relax. These muscular contractions have become so deeply involuntary and unconscious that eventually we no longer remember how to move about freely, and the result is stiffness, soreness, and restricted movement. And that just totally summed up how I felt. Just going back, so these are the reflexes. So on the left, you've got what we call the red light reflex. So this is that response to stress when you kind of you want to hide. You protect yourself, you roll in on yourself. So look how the shoulders are rolled forward, the head is forward, the pelvis is up, the knees are together, and it's a protective bodily response. The next response in the center, we call that the green light reflex. Now, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, stress gives us that get up and go. So, you know, if imagine that you're at a cafe talking to a friend, and then you suddenly realize, oh my God, I've got to be in the doctor's in sort of 10 minutes. And what do? You kind of, when you remember, you sit up, you get this, you know, your spine erects, and you're sort of propelled, ready for action. So our nervous system does that to us to, you know, help get us in that ready state. When, you know, if you go to a party and you walk into a room, maybe there may be several things you do. Maybe you feel like you want to hide, or maybe you kind of put your game face on and you sort of open your posture and sort of boldly walk into the room. So we kind of use our posture and use our body, and these are parts of our habits, how we respond to situations in life. And on the far right, we've got what we call the trauma reflex. So the trauma reflex is when you have an injury on one part of the body and you compensate. So you have, let's say you injure your left ankle. So your brain, so you won't necessarily do this on purpose, but your brain will kind of make you shift so that you don't put weight onto that ankle because it doesn't want you to have the pain. So, you know, you end up compensating. And, you know, other ways that we might do that is the way we carry a bag, the way we carry a child, or it could be something more psychological, and it could be a freeze response, where we are kind of locked in the body and traumatized. So, okay, so I've looked at that one. And yeah, this was another thing that that was totally new to me, this concept of sensory motor amnesia. So I've never heard of this before, but it's an habituated state of forgetfulness. It's memory loss of how certain groups of muscles feel and how to control them. And because it occurs within the central nervous system, we're not aware of it, yet it affects us to our very core. And this was key for me. Our image of who we are and what we can experience and what we can do is profoundly diminished by sensory motor amnesia. So it's not just not moving, it affects your body image. It affects your sense of who you are and what you can do in the world, your confidence, the way you might behave. So that was a kind of aha moment that, gosh, this is not just about a little bit of pain in your body. This is about affecting your whole being and who you are and who you are in the world. So anyway, I tried on YouTube this exercise called arch and flatten, and what it looks like, if those of you who know Pilates, it looks like a pelvic tilt. However, it does not feel like a pelvic tilt because the cueing is different. And as Nikki knows, with hypopressives, it's all in the cueing. It's about the setup and it's about the intention of what you are doing. So somatics is not about the muscle and bone. Well, it is, but it's more about the brain. It is about teaching the brain when you've had an injury and you are kind of holding yourself in a certain way, or if you're the sort of person who carries yourself in a red light kind of way or a green light kind of way. It's about recognizing those responses in your body and what they are, but then doing movements so that your brain uses your body in a non-habitual way. So it's helping you to come out of your habits. And so, yeah, I tried this movement, and the way it was cued, I couldn't, as a Pilates teacher, I remember thinking at the time, what is he saying? I don't really understand what this is doing. I just didn't get it, but I felt it. And that again was another light bulb moment for me of I'm doing something different with my body here. I'm doing it with a different intention. And the intention was to get the maps of my body in the brain reorganized and sharpened so that my brain can sense the real estate of my body again. So I knew it was different and I was keen to learn more. So I bought the book and I did the training, and during the training I found out that Thomas Hanna's his work was massively influenced by, maybe some of you have heard of the Alexander technique. So it was massively influenced by Alexander, but also by Feldenkrais. Perhaps some of you have heard of the Feldenkrais method, but also Hans Selye, who is kind of renowned as the father of the stress response. So he was one of the first scientists to kind of link stress with illness. So yeah, so as both Selye and Thomas Hanna talk about, you know, stress is not necessarily something, you know, terrible. We need it in our lives to help us adapt and to help us grow. And, you know, but sometimes we get into a state where it is just stress and we're not recovering. But as well as that, we all respond to stresses in our different ways. So we have a different body response. So we're talking about those body postures. Some people will be more one way than the other. And some people will probably have elements of all of those red light, green light, and trauma reflexes going on in their bodies. And it's kind of knowing that and then responding to it. So yeah, so stress is part of life, and from an evolutionary point of view, it sort of gives us that impetus to survive. Part of being a human is about survival, you know, the continued survival of the species. And as part of that, we are wired, our brains are wired and set up to kind of monitor threat. So, you know, way back in times where we had to guard against saber-toothed tigers, those were the type of threats. But when you think about our modern day threats, they're quite different. They might be, you know, a phone call from a person you don't want to hear from. They might be a toxic environment at work. It could be a financial strain. So the threats that we have in our life now are still real, but they're very different from a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, so a part of the course was really finding out about stress and finding out what goes on in the body when we are stressed. And we had to read. Has anyone read this book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers? Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, so it's basically the Bible on the stress response. But you know, what again, another light bulb moment for me was just this idea that, you know, if you are a zebra on the savannah, you're not stressed until suddenly a lion comes into the territory and then the herd runs. And if you're a lion on the savannah, you're kind of lying around in the sun, and then you need your food, and then your stress is, you know, in chasing your prey. But then that's all over, and the lion goes back to being a lion, lying around in the sun. The zebra goes back to being, you know, part of the herd, and they're not worrying and they're not thinking about things. So the stress response is not going on in their heads. It's just something that happens on a short-term basis. Our stress in the modern world is very, very different. I'm just going to read you this bottom part. So the stress response can be mobilized not only in response to physical and or psychological insults, but also in expectation of them. Another light bulb moment. Thinking about stuff causes stress, right? And when we think about stuff that makes us stress, we just, you know, we sort of, it's easy to say, oh, I feel a little bit stressed, but actually you have got a physiological cascade going on in your entire body, just the same as a lion chasing a zebra on the savannah when you are having these kind of stressful thoughts. I think that this picture is from Explain Pain by Butler and Mosley, and I think it's one of the best depictions of stress that I've seen. So you've got, I don't know whether you can see or whether the controls are in the way, but you've got a picture of a wolf there, so representing the threat, and then you've got the person, and you've got, you know, kind of all of the body systems are mobilized in response to threat. So you've got, you know, your nervous system changing your heart rate and your digestion. You've got your muscles changing, the blood getting diverted away from digestion to your muscles so you can run away quickly. Your endocrine system and your hormones are changed. Your pain is ramped up, and as I said, your digestion and elimination is affected as well. And so the threat, as we've said, it could be something on the outside. So it could be something that we're looking at, we're seeing. It could be, you know, something outside of us, but it could also be inside of us as well. It could be our thoughts. It could be what we're sensing in our body. So it could be, you know, heat or cold, or it could be compression or stretch. It could be chemical imbalance, or it could be, as I've said, the thoughts going through our heads. Don't want that one. Okay, yeah, so so when we're in stress, the sympathetic nervous system is being ramped up. As I've said, we've got all of these systems that are going into overdrive, and when it's set in motion, these things are happening. The heart rate is increasing, blood pressure increasing, circulation restricted, digestion slows, bladder relaxes, muscle tension increases, all of these things that are not good for our body. And let's just imagine, you know, this is no longer a short-term thing like the zebras and the lions. This is something that is chronically happening because we're having thoughts, or we're seeing things we don't like, we're hearing news stories, we're having to deal with people who, you know, who might be difficult in our lives, and we're just not coming out of this sympathetic overdrive. So yeah, the Explain Pain book comes up with this, what I think is an absolutely fantastic concept called the Protectometer. So this person in the middle represents, can you see the numbers 0 to 10? So at 0, that's when you've got no threat in your life. And then, you know, the numbers represent, okay, so there's a little bit of threat or a little bit of threat from something else. But where might these threats in our lives come from? Could be things that we hear or taste, smell, so things in our senses. It could be the things that we say to ourselves, oh, I'm no good at this. My life's never going to change. It could be things that we do. It might be bad habits that we have that we just can't get out of. It could be places that we go that make us, feel bad. Like I said, like a toxic work environment or something like that. It could be our thoughts and beliefs. Oh, my parents had this hip pain, so I'm going to have this hip pain. They had to have hip replacements, so that's going to happen to me. So our beliefs affect our stress as well. Things happening in your body. God knows at this time of life, going through the menopause, there's a bloody load of things happening in your body all the time. But once you know about it, you see this, it's on this side of DIMS, danger in me, so dangers, so the threats that you are detecting. If you know about what's going on in the menopause, actually it turns into it turns into something else. It turns into something that is safety, because oh right, I know this is going to happen, and so it's no longer a threat. So this protectometer can go up and down based on our thoughts and what we do with those thoughts. And it affects our body. The stress, as we've talked about, affects our body in these different ways. So we might carry ourselves differently according to how we are feeling. The fight, flight, freeze response can clearly be seen in some people's bodies, and we've probably felt that. Like, even if you're watching did any of you watch Game of Thrones, when just something awful happens every single episode, oh God, having this response of the horror or the fear of something. So this happens in response to threat, that we feel stress, that we feel pain, that we feel anxiety, that we feel trauma. They're all related. It's all part of the nervous system. What can we do about it? Well, we can calm down our nervous systems. So we've talked about being in the fight, flight, and being in the sympathetic part of the nervous system. Well, there's and I am simplifying this, by the way. It's more complicated than this, but I think this works as a simplified explanation. So the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of that sort of fight, flight, and it often gets called rest, digest. But you have to kind of activate it. You have to actively do stuff to get there. So it brings our heart rate down. It normalizes blood pressure. It decreases tension throughout the body. We feel a sense of well-being and of relaxation and of calmness. We can think more clearly. We can make better decisions. Our digestion is improved. Our circulation is improved. How do we get there? So how do we calm down the nervous system? Well, I want to introduce you to a concept called somatic quieting, which is about taking your focus inside of your own body and concentrating on how you are feeling and what's going on in your body. And ways of doing this might be diaphragmatic breathing, focusing on your breath, focusing on what your ribs are doing during your breath, focusing on how the air feels as it goes through your nose as you breathe, slowing down the breath. The golden number is 6 breaths per minute. So if you think about inhaling for 6 and exhaling for 6, and then you'll get your 6 breaths per minute. That seems to be have a lot of evidence around it for taking you into this parasympathetic state. Meditation does that same thing as well. So does prayer. Also movement that is done in comfort, without strain, slowly, mindfully, and with awareness of sensation. So that's somatics, that's Feldenkrais. You know, as opposed to strength training at the gym, which is great for your body too, but it does something else. Or cardiorespiratory fitness, also fantastic for your body, but it does something else. So movement that is done calmly, and also for me with a sense of pleasure and with a sense of kind of exploring as well, really helps to calm that nervous system. Progressive relaxation, guided imagery, visualization, these are all things that can take us into somatic quieting. Now, sorry, now this is very messy page, but this page is taken from the back of my manual from the Explain Pain course with Butler and Mosley. But it's a list of all of the factors, and just move that so you can read the top, that will contribute to a healthy nervous system. So aside from the somatic quieting, things like knowledge and education, as I mentioned before about the menopause, if you know something about biology or about what's going on in your body, you're less likely to be worried about it because you kind of understand it. Perception of the stressor, so how bad do you think the problem is? You know, talking to somebody else, that might sort of dial that down a little bit. Exercise, but also rest and recovery, social support, having a medical system where you feel heard and you feel that, you know, somebody's listening to you and helping you. Your belief system, family belief system, it could be that there are beliefs passed down through your family about, you know, food or about movement that aren't necessarily the best for you. So, you know, sort of opening your world to different belief systems can sometimes be helpful. A sense of humor, coping skills, obviously a healthy diet, good sleep, contact with nature, lifestyle factors like reducing alcohol and smoking. But it's number 11 that I want to concentrate on. So homuncular refreshment. So the homunculus is the representation of your body in your brain. And refreshing the homunculus is doing slow, gentle, mindful movement. If you do it too quick, movement's still good for you, but it does not refresh the homunculus in the same way. If it's slow, if it's mindful, what I always say is you're slowing down the movie so the brain can see. And so more changes can be made and the brain can kind of perceive the territory better. And somatics is something that falls into that category. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, so this is an interesting picture of you know, the representation of your body in your brain. And you know, if you look at what we can see here, where's the back? Well, it's right here. It's just this tiny area of the brain. We tend to think, well, our back's massive, so the back would have a huge occupy a huge part of the brain, but actually it's our sensory organs, you know, our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our hands. We do so much with our hands, and our back doesn't really get much of a look in, really. So when we are refreshing this kind of body map of the brain, we have to try a little bit harder with some of these areas that we have problems with, because the way movement works is that we rely on our habit. We don't have to get up every morning and learn how to walk. We know how to walk because it's stored in our hindbrain as a pattern. And so we sort of, you know, develop these patterns and ways of moving, but they might not always be the best ways of moving because we get into compensations, we get into, you know, ways of holding ourselves. And so to sort of come out of those patterns we do really need to slow down, and we need to sort of focus a little bit more on these areas that the brain finds a lot more difficult to see. And so, yeah, the gift of somatics for me is that awareness that I feel on the mat. It's really sensing myself. So one thing I should say about somatics, that, you know, how it is different from yoga and Pilates. If you go to a yoga and Pilates class, and I still do both of them, and I still love them both, but you are largely following a teacher. So you're looking at the teacher, and then you're doing the movement, and they're showing you, and then you're copying what they're doing. It's totally different in somatics. You'll be lying on the floor. There's no visual. You close your eyes, and we do that to get people to shut out the visuals, to sort of really focus the awareness on the interior of the body. And the movements will be really small, so they'll not be complicated. It might just be kind of like roll your arm out to the side. And you might be thinking, well, what does that even mean? But just that act of, you know, your brain's thinking about rolling out to the side. You're rolling out from the center of your body, and you're moving in a different way, and you're slowing down that movement, and you would move your entire shoulder and your neck and your back and your arm in a completely different way, because you don't know what you're doing. You sort of, it's almost like you're discovering movement, you're rediscovering movement. And so really deeply sensing yourself in somatics can be quite disconcerting at first, because you kind of thinking, am I doing it right? And there is no wrong. The only wrong is perhaps doing it too fast, so that you can't, you know, you really can't sense it, or trying too hard and trying to make yourself have too much range, because it's really not about that. It's about sensing the movement, but keeping it comfortable as well. But yeah, when we start to deeply sense our bodies on the mat like that, we start to notice then in life what affects us. So, you know, like as I've talked about, you know, when you're listening to something on the news, you feel how it affects you and your body, and how when somebody says something, like if I were to suddenly swear, I'm not going to do it, but if I were, you'd probably all go, oh God, you'd have a reaction, you'd respond in your body. And with the practice of somatics, you start noticing that a little bit more about your own self, what you are responding to in day-to-day life, and then kind of adjusting, well, do I need to feel like that? And you know, kind of being a bit more mindful and a bit more aware about your day-to-day life, and doing something about it. You know, awareness is key. If we don't know if we're not aware, then how are we going to do something about it? How are we going to change something? But when you start to develop this sense of awareness, that's where change begins. And I think I'll stop there. There was a little bit more that I was going to say about this idea of danger and safety in the body, but that could be a whole nother lecture. So I will stop there.
Fabulous. Oh, that was great. So I think we can probably open it up and see whether anybody's got any questions. So at the bottom of your screen, you've got a reactions button. You can press your reactions button to let us know whether you've got any questions or anything you'd like to ask.
Make that bit bigger so I can see. Yeah, so I don't know whether I've really answered your question about what somatics is. So whilst people are maybe thinking whether they have any questions, why don't we stand up and kind of experience some of those body patterns?
That'd be good.
So we call this the red line. Feel free to stand up and do this with me, or you can stay in your chair if you like. But the red light reflex is when we kind of curl into ourselves. And it's been studied that if somebody fires a gun, you're going to have this reaction. You kind of jump forward and you do this, and what actually happens is, and we'll do it in slow motion, your chin pokes forward, your elbows come in towards the body, the shoulders roll forward, the chest comes down, the pelvis comes up, the knees come together, and you've got a tightening in the pelvic floor as well. And that feels really horrible in our body. So just come really slowly out of that and open up. So when we experience stress, we're not doing that every time there's something stressful, but on a very small level, we're getting that sort of contraction inwards and forwards in the body. And we do it so often that it kind of becomes a little bit ingrained in our posture. So what we do in somatics is we have movements where, rather than trying to stretch, open, so that's the logical thing that people would think, oh right, so you're tight in the front of your body, so what you need to do is open up and stretch. But actually, when you open up and stretch, you are just hitting those same restrictions that you already had. You haven't done anything about the restriction. So this is where the idea of somatics being brain-based comes into it, because when you contract slowly into something, then actually your brain starts to take notice, because you're doing something different, you're doing something slowly, and it feels the contraction. So when you felt the contraction, then you can begin to slowly unwind from that contraction. And the slow unwinding of the contraction leads you then into a more comfortable expansion. And just doing that small movement then felt better for me than when I just opened up my arms. When I contracted first and let my brain feel it, and then opened out, there's a different feeling in the body. But we kind of teach that on the floor, and we have a set pattern that we teach people. So that's the red light response, that response of closing in on yourself. And then we have the green light response, which is kind of that, throwing your shoulders back, really pushing down through the ground, holding your head up high, and opening the shoulders. And actually, this can often be an overcorrection. So there's a difference to what Nikki does in HYPOPRESSIVES, where it's about tensioning and it's about pulling in various directions. It isn't about trying to have a good posture and just throwing the shoulders back, because that is just creating more tension. So having that constant green light reflex of, it's almost like you're getting ready for something all the time. You're on this heightened state of readiness, and your muscles are tense with it. And then we have the trauma reflex, where we've all got a little bit of this, because we all favor one leg, we all probably favor one shoulder. And if you kind of stand up and sort of, try to stand absolutely straight, it wouldn't feel right. I would gravitate onto this hip. So I know that about myself. And when I find myself doing it, I now kind of think, right, well, let's give this hip a turn as well. Why should it always be this hip that's getting kind of stretched out and the other hip is not? So yeah, so that's just a little bit about the reflexes that we have in our body and how we might go about changing them. But that was a really, really quick overview. The patterns that we have are kind of set patterns that are taught on the floor at first anyway. And it's that idea of contracting into it first and then slowly unwinding from it and then taking your body in the opposite direction. So it's a bit counterintuitive if you do Pilates, because that you're thinking about kind of holding your body, and then you're also thinking about doing stretches. It's not that Pilates is wrong. This is just different.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about HYPOPRESSIVES. I get asked that question a lot, really.
Yeah. And I actually find that somatics and hyperpressives are so great together, because when I do my somatics, this is what I think I'm doing. I think that I am contracting my muscles, and then I'm extending my muscles in the opposite direction, and not just my muscles, but my fascia, my nervous system, and it's my whole body. That I'm not thinking about just doing my arm. It's a whole body pattern that we do every time. So your whole body is kind of communicating with each other, and that's what I was saying about the brain maps. So you're another reason for doing somatics is for motor control, to sort of keep your brain in control of your body, and a kind of smoothness of movement that it has, and taking you back to that bodily comfort. It changes the resting tonus of your muscles. But you see, when we go into our everyday lives, and we sort of, let's say you sit for 5 hours, you're going to have tension build up in your body. So you know, it's about unwinding that tension, that maladaptive tension that from sitting too long, and getting back to your bodily comfort. And then doing hyperpressives is, you know, an altogether different kind of reset. And I just love it. I love the feeling of going to that bodily comfort, but then I'm training myself in that sort of expanded posture with hyperpressive. So I just think they're really brilliant together.
Excellent. Really good to have you on, actually, now that you've been doing some for a while. I mean, we obviously, we talk very similarly about kind of a brain reset, changing the conversations, getting the tension out of areas that are too tight and into areas that need more tension to support us. So it's very, very similar, but using a very different type of technique. Yes, but I don't think it's complementary. I think, like I just say, I think like a lot of these things, though. It's like a lot of these things. I mean, whenever I'm talking on my taster sessions, I'm always saying, look, this isn't going to be, for some of you, this isn't going to be the only thing that you'll need. There'll be lots of different things that you'll need to help you, and it might be just part of your journey. Yeah. I can see Ruth is raising her hand, but I just can't make this big enough. I don't know whether you got the control. Oh, right, there's Ruth. Do you want to unmute yourself, Ruth? Are you stopping your screen share? Because maybe that'll bring us back on. Oh, maybe. Right, okay. So hang on a minute. I can't see the control for stopping my share. I can see new share. Oh, right, okay, right, sorry. Should just bring us all back on. We just got stop share. Right, there we go. That's better.
So my question, and I must admit, I use Zoom all the time, and I didn't realise there were so many different reactions. I was having a bit of a laugh with it, but it's lots of fun. But my question is, so I was sitting here thinking, I don't think I've got any pain, and then I started to think, oh, I've got an awful lot of pain that I just accept, because I'm hypermobile. I hold myself in a really weird way to cope with that. And so I was kind of almost denying my pain, and then suddenly thought, actually, I've got a lot of pain, and I just put up with it and deal with it. So I know you said that it would be good for us to try a somatic session for free, but can you just try and verbalize what it would feel like? So if we'd said, we'd love to try this somatics, what would it entail? Because I don't think I've got my head around what it actually would be like.
Well, you would be rolling around on the floor.
I love that.
Having a lovely time. No, seriously, it's definitely my pleasure practice. It's kind of a bit of head work at first, like hyperpressives. You know, you've got to think about what you're doing, but once you get into the rhythm of it, you can really feel that your body is opening. So it's just that lovely feeling of spaciousness in your body. And we are deliberately kind of working with patterns of the body. So we're deliberately going into that curled up response, but then slowly opening out. But it's a lot slower than that. And it's a bit more technical than that, but you would be talked through it every step of the way, and you'd be like, oh, okay, feeling different things in your body. And then we have patterns to open up, sort of contract the back of the body, and then open up the back of the body, and then the sides, and then the diagonals. Yeah, the center. We work a lot on the center of the body. So remember when I showed you that map of the brain and how tiny the back is? Because this center of our body is so underrepresented in the brain, that's where we get a lot of the tensions, because we just build up our habits here in the trunk, and we feel like we want to stretch, and we're stretching our little arms and legs, but actually it's the trunk that needs to be folded in on itself so it can open up. So yeah, you'd be in a first somatics class, you would be probably feel a little bit confused. You'd probably want there to be, but I want to see an example, right? So, you know, you might feel a little bit frustrated, but then you'd feel, well, most people feel curious. And there's a lots of kind of like, oh gosh, you know, lots of talk after the class of, I felt this, or this was really strange, or, you know, and, you know, even noticing differences about how they walk afterwards. Or I've had people get in their car after they've been for a session and said, I had to adjust my mirror because they got taller, because they'd unwound, because we do a lot of kind of winding from the center of the body. So you will be doing unusual things with your body, small things that build up into a pattern, but then it's the pattern that you'd learn. And so like a typical, I don't do drop-in classes because I just think you need to kind of understand a little bit the concept. But what typically happens is I will kind of run a 10-week course or something like that, and by about session 4 people are going, I get it now. Like, so it takes a few weeks, and they've enjoyed it. They've kind of like been intrigued, and they felt like these really interesting things going on in their bodies that then they've been able to use. But then they start to get it about week 4 or 5, when we've then had enough time to practice the different patterns, and then we can start playing around with it a little bit more. So again, I know that's probably not a satisfactory answer to your question, but yeah, with it being such an experiential modality, it really is all about in the experiencing of it. It's like mindfulness. Yeah. How do you explain mindfulness to somebody? Because people think it's, you know, sitting there trying to clear your thoughts. That's not what it is. And it's different for different people as well. Yeah. And of course, you know, everybody's coming to somatics with their own body patterns. So you get people who, I want to do everything really aggressively, and I want to get my arm over here. And then you get people like I was at first, in pain and a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure whether I should be doing this. So, you know, I've been told not to arch, I've been told not to blah, blah, blah. So, you know, we're bringing our body patterns and our sort of self-image to the practice as well. So we're then kind of questioning that and unraveling that and experimenting and exploring. So it's different for everybody, and every session is different, and it develops differently as well.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, okay, Natalie, baby's woken up. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Has anyone else got any more questions? Give me a wave if you have. Donna, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, am I on?
Yes.
Yeah. So is it usually that people need to come to classes, or do they come and then they learn their own kind of flow to have like a self practice? How do people use it moving forwards?
Well, there's different ways. I mean, there are different ways to practice. So there are people who just do sort of classes. But what I find, I'm a teacher. So you know, I was a teacher in a classroom for 20 years before I did this. And, you know, I taught grammar and you have to be thorough with grammar. You know, you need to know the basics, you need to know the building blocks of how to put stuff together. So I like to, I like to teach people so they can do it themselves. I want to enable, I want to empower, I want to give people self-efficacy. So you might, you know, you get some people who do classes and it's like, well, you don't really know what you're doing, but you go into the class and you're still enjoying it. And that's one way of doing it. But I like to do a sort of, okay, I'm going to teach you the basic patterns. And, you know, we then practice those patterns and build them up. So those are two ways classes can go. And then there's something else completely different, and we have, that's the body work. So the body work is touch and movement and kind of facilitating somebody's movement, but we have a protocol that we apply to what we're looking at, more at the patterns with the person. Then what body patterns do they have, what's their walk like, and you don't have to be in pain, by the way, to do somatics. It can be a pleasure practice as well. It's not just for pain. Pain was my entry into it, but for some people, it's they've been a dancer, but they now just want something that's a bit more for somatic quieting in the body, rather than, you know, the kind of strenuous stuff. And for others, it's trauma. It's, you know, it's sort of not sensing their body anymore, because, you know, when you're traumatized, you don't feel your emotions, you swallow up your emotions, but you also don't feel your physical body as well. So it can really assist with those kind of issues, and just having that sense of well-being and wellness in the body. So yeah, there's the kind of drop-in classes, there's courses like the type I run, and then there's the kind of one-to-one personalized body work as well.
Do you online, or is it mostly in person?
Well, it was mostly in person, but of course, you know, COVID. So yeah, I've started to go online a lot more. You can do it online, but obviously it's not the same, because we have, like, as I say, for the body work, we have a set protocol that, you know, a variety of set protocols that we go through with people, and without being able to touch them, it is very different. But you can still coach really, really well online, but it is a different thing.
Yeah, I think that's the same with hypopressives, is that, you know, the bit that's missing from doing it online is that touch. That, yes, you know, when I've got a client here and I'm training them, it's quite a different experience for them to being online. But most of the people that are here that have done hypopressives I've only ever met online. So, and I wouldn't have been able to meet them here because they don't live anywhere near me. So yeah, there's plus and there's minuses, I suppose. You just adapt, but it's good to know that you've got some online options as well, because certainly something that I'd like to look at, I think. Yeah, well, you're all very welcome to join my group. I've got, as I say, the free group on Facebook. So tell us more about what you can offer us then. Oh, okay. So I've got that group, and in that group, what I teach are the 4 foundational movements, and I've got kind of PDFs describing the movements. So you could just do it from looking at the PDFs and sort of play around with the movement yourself. But then I've also got these sort of very long, very deliberate, slow videos, which are aimed at somebody who's coming to this with chronic pain, and they want to feel secure, they want to feel safe, because that's the basis of it all, you know, feeling safe and feeling secure in your body. And it's really making sure that the baseline is comfort and safety, and teaching them a set movement. So we have something called the flower, which is the folding in and the opening. That's one of the first ones that I teach, because that's where most people carry the stress at the front of the body, especially with all the sitting that we're doing and all the laptoping that we're doing these days. That body pattern is kind of being reinforced physically, isn't it, by, you know, what we're doing with our bodies. So sorry.
Yes, so in the group, I teach that movement for flexion, I teach an extension movement, and I teach a movement for the side of the body. So I kind of cover the basics, so that people have got these kind of 4 movements that they can practice. And then if they want to come and do some more, then I'm running a 10-week course. And I like to do a sort of interactive course as well, so that, you know, we have a Q&A after the session, and it's progressive. So it isn't just, oh, you come to my class, you just lie on the floor and roll around, and then you go away and you come back the next week. You can do it like that way if you like, but I'm teaching it and I'm setting it up so it's progressive, so that you've learned your 4 foundational movements, but then we're adding things on. So we're adding on the extremities, the shoulders, the hips, the neck, the feet, the arms and the wrists, and even the eyes and the tongue. So it's like, you know, all of the muscles in the body. And so that builds up to a long, slow, full body sort of indulgent class, and also a 30-minute practice that you can kind of do every day to refresh your body briskly.
Sounds really good. I like the sound of it. So will you make sure that you share all of what you want to tell us about, and then I can share those with in the group?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I can say, I'll send you some links.
Can you just pass the reins back over to me?
Oh yes, of course.
Just click on my name.
Oh, how do we do that?
Just click on my name on the side,
Okay.
where it says more.
Right, hang on a minute.
Oh, I can reclaim actually.
Can you? I can't see where it says. Oh, there you go. Right, you got it back.
Brilliant. Okay. Well,
thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening.
It's been amazing.
For your questions.
For joining us.
Get in touch if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll make sure I share. You're in the Just Do It group this month anyway, aren't you? So I'll be sharing stuff in there as soon as you send it over to me. It was really, really interesting. It's nice to kind of have some stuff on that I really wouldn't have been able to tell you about. I'm not so sure I 100% understand it. I think I'm very much a practical learner.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah.
I like to do the practical, so I definitely would like to experience it and practice it a little bit, and then that way I'll kind of probably get a bit more about what you're talking about. Definitely
that's the way forward, the experience.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much. Have a lovely week.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Well, everybody. Bye.